Hey everyone, I'm Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storytellers show. And today we're going behind the scenes with one of the biggest consulting firms in the world, KPMG. And I'm super excited to have with us Cliff Justice, who is the US leader of enterprise innovation. And Cliff and his team develop and incubate the next generation of businesses, technologies, and solutions for KPMG and its bajillion clients. I know that's a very technical number. You'll have to correct me on that, Cliff. And his team not only does that, but they also make minority investments in a network of innovative startups that support KPMG's growth strategy. And Cliff's background has been at KPMG for many years, working in digital capabilities, right? Things like cloud, blockchain, AI, automation. But prior to that, Cliff was also an entrepreneur himself and also spent some wild rides on the back of an ambulance and working in healthcare. So we're going to take a wild ride today with Cliff Justice and learn how innovation is taking place hand in hand with some of the biggest consulting, brains in the world. So welcome to the show, Cliff.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Susan.
Thanks for joining me. So I always ask this question when we dive in with a new guest, and tell us how you got started, right? So one moment you're working on the back of an ambulance, the next minute you're heading up innovation at KPMG. Tell us how you got to this place.
Yeah, well, that's like over a 30-year period.
Yeah, over 30 years, just a little snap like that.
Little snap. Yeah, so I started working on an ambulance in college when I was at University of Texas in Arlington, and just got my EMT certificate and went on and got my paramedic certificate, and it was a good job through college. And then flight school, I wanted to be a pilot.
Commercial or military?
Commercial. Mm-hmm. So I went through, kind of a formal training program and became a flight instructor and just flew to build hours. I never really took a job where it was like a real commercial airline job, but I did fly for some corporates and for some, fixed-based operators, and built hours and built time that way. But that's when I realized I didn't want to be a pilot. Was when I was actually doing it for a living, and I was still very young back then, and the opportunity arose to help someone start an ambulance company. And I had a background in kind of working on the ambulance, but me and several others, we started a small ambulance, kind of a non-emergency transport company in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That company was then acquired by a large national healthcare company, and that gave me the opportunity to work in that type of corporate world. I had several jobs with that firm. I was head of marketing. I had a technology job. I ended up in Seattle, Washington, as a general manager running the ambulance services in the Pacific Northwest. It was a great experience. We had a number of sort of learning opportunities. This was in my 20s. We got into a Y2K situation in the late 90s, where we had a bunch of disparate systems that had to be updated and converted. That process led me and some others to go to Silicon Valley, move to Silicon Valley and do a startup. And the company was really centered on software development. So we did a number of consulting engagements and products. It was originally designed to be an online marketplace, kind of a two-sided marketplace for software developers. But the complexity of software development online and the tools and technologies that we had back in the early 2000s did not lend itself to being a very effective tool to describe engagements and match buyers to suppliers. So we became a consulting firm, and we were actually quite successful at that, and became pretty well known for software development, offshore outsourcing, developing complex requirements, helping structure complex outsourcing deals. Putting these outsourcing deals in the context of large corporate transformations, and that's what I did for quite a while, for a number of years. That led me to another firm, and I joined another firm that was just getting off the ground. I wasn't the founder of that firm, but one of the early employees. We built that firm to be another pretty well-known consulting firm. And then that led me to KPMG. And I joined KPMG in 2008 to build a very similar type practice. Coincidentally, about 2 or 3 years later, I ended up architecting and engineering the acquisition of my former firm. And it was called Equiterra. And we integrated Equiterra into KPMG in 2011.
Well, you're probably the best person for like the acquisition, for the due diligence team, right?
Well, yeah, for the due diligence, and plus it was just I knew the leaders, and I knew the key consultants within that firm. It was one of the best groups of people I'd ever worked with. So it was, you were able to execute that type of transaction with a lot of confidence, and it turned out to be a very good acquisition for the firm. Many of those people that came over from Equiterra are leaders at KPMG now. So it turned out to be a really good acquisition for the firm. I ended up, I was an operator for a number of years, running that practice, and that taught me a lot, just in terms of building and running the business. We saw that industry starting to change around 2013, 2014, as automation began making an impact on how outsourcing deals and labor-centric solutions were being digitized and automated. So we began to explore the idea of artificial intelligence and robotic process automation, and we started experimenting with some of these technologies, and that led me to really begin to focus on automation, AI, more of the underpinning digital transformation technologies. And we built our presence in that space. We made a number of investments. We built some practices focused on artificial intelligence and intelligent automation. And then that led me into this current role, which is enterprise innovation for the firm, which today is really focused on, as you said, defining the next generation of services and products, business models for KPMG, and really what we offer the market. The solutions that we're going to be offering the market 3, 5, even 10 years down the road.
Yeah, which is so fantastic, right? Because I don't know about you, but it's part of the thing that I love most about my job is being able to see what's coming over the next 3 to 5 years, right? You kind of get a bird's eye view on what the future looks like. That's exciting. So tell us a little bit about that. So, as you think about clients that are coming in right now, can you share with us? I know you can't reveal client names, that's okay, but tell us about some of these, technologies that we should be keeping an eye on. So we've all heard of artificial intelligence. We've heard, remotely about, that Snoop Dogg has a house next to Martha Stewart in the Metaverse. Like maybe that's about as much as we know. We've heard about some NFT kind of things. Maybe we're investing a little bit in Bitcoin or blockchain or have an inkling about that. But tell us from an enterprise perspective, maybe one or two cool things that we're not thinking about, or things that you're thinking about in concert with some of your clients that we should all know about.
Mhm. Well, one of the biggest is what's being called the metaverse.
Mhm.
And I think the best definition for that is the 3D internet. It's the next generation of the internet. It is an internet that is more decentralized. It places a premium on security and privacy, and it emphasizes more power to the user of the internet, as opposed to centralized data control.
Mhm.
So the idea of blockchain is very important to this next generation of the internet. You hear the term Web3 and Metaverse, and sometimes they're used interchangeably. They are different things, but they are very closely connected, and there is a lot of overlap.
Wait, Cliff, can I just get clarification for some of our listeners who may not be connected to this world just yet? When I think about Web 1, it's the semantic web, right? I do a search. Most typically, I think about Google. I find information by typing words into a search engine, and I get connected with other words and documents that give things back to me. And that may include even e-commerce, right? Finding an item, by searching with tags and things like that. That's how we found stuff. Web 2 is platform based, right? So we're thinking about Facebook and Twitter, and the way that we operate, even business to business, is over platforms. Salesforce, all of our SaaS based technologies that we think about have arisen during Web 2. And Web 3, as you talk about, is this creator space, right? Where the person who's actually doing the creating and the person who's using are more empowered more than ever, because we have agency to own our stuff, as opposed to putting it on a platform and being subject to the whims of the algorithm changes of Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or whatever platform we wind up using. So now we get to hold on to our stuff as individuals more than we ever have before. And things are tracked in an open and transparent way. So everything is not behind some corporate firewall, but we have the ability to transact and see those transactions quite clearly. Am I summing it up the way you see it?
I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly how I see it. I would say that there's really no hard lines between Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. These are
It's not like those are going away, right? We're still going to use that stuff, but now there's a new way. There's a new sheriff in town.
And they're gradients, right? They kind of overlap. There's an adoption that has to take place. Web 3 is different than it's as different from Web 1 and 2 as Web 1 was from the
As
walled
DARPANet
garden.
was from where we are now.
Yeah, well, you might look at it like the old America Online or Prodigy, or those sort of walled gardens where there's some similarities, but the underpinning technology is dramatically different. And between what you had when I was in college and younger, you had these walled gardens like America Online and Prodigy that they looked and felt like an internet. But you didn't have these protocols that that pulls everything together, right? TCP/IP, hypertext, HTML.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so nostalgic for like 1998.
Well,
like transporting me back.
Those were big, sort of revolutionary. Now, those technologies had existed for a long time. It was the agreement that those were going to be the standards for the World Wide Web, because before that you had a lot of kind of contenders for the dominant protocols of the internet. You had like Gopher, if I recall.
Oof, wow.
You had other technologies like FTP, which still exist.
Sure.
And existed for a long
My
time.
Gen Z audience right now is completely lost. Out of those
Completely
members who
lost,
are in
yeah.
this group, they're like, what's a
history lesson.
Prodigy?
But it's important because the same discussions and debates are going to have to happen for interoperability to occur in the Web3 metaverse that you just described. which is going to really be more immersive. It'll be more of a virtual world where I think a good analogy for somebody that's uninitiated, this isn't a perfect analogy, but it's good. That would be that the metaverse would be like the internet. There's going to be several. There's not going to be, there's going to be a bunch at first, but it's going to consolidate. You'll probably have, some geopolitical separation of metaverses. China may have a metaverse. The West might have 2 or 3 metaverses, but then you'll have millions or billions of these virtual worlds that sit in the metaverse. And those virtual worlds might be like a website is today. So you might have a consumer brand or retailer or company or protocol, that allows access into this more immersive virtual world. And these can take on different looks and kind of different sort of personas. Some may be playful, some may be very professional. You might have, education oriented virtual worlds. You might have corporate virtual worlds that
you have clients who are engaged in this now, Cliff, who are diving in. Can you give us an example so it feels like, how would I even dig into this? And I'm an enterprise user.
I'll give you 2 examples.
Right.
One is a consumer brand, and this is a client who is looking at reestablishing and updating their brand, targeting a new audience, a new demographic, who are largely in the metaverse today. And as you know, the metaverse today is closed. It's games, mainly video games like Roblox or Fortnite or World of Warcraft. Those are all metaverses, but they're games, and they're not interoperable. But games like Roblox and Minecraft, these are games where you go build your own creation. So you kind of get a glimpse of what the future metaverse will look like as it's adopted in a more, kind of business-like or, in different types of scenarios. The consumer brand that I'm speaking of is looking at targeting a new audience, beginning to extend their brand into the metaverse and then into some of these games.
And what industry would that be in as a consumer brand? Is that?
It's appliances.
Appliances.
Yeah. And it's an appliance, brand. Manufacturing that's been around for a while, but the demographics are changing. They want to keep their brand top of mind as a new generation, where the metaverse is very well accepted and understood with these younger. If you just look at the numbers, just look at the network that already exists in some of these games and some of these gaming platforms. It's not too far of a leap to see how they will extend into the consumer space. So the consumer and retail space is all over the metaverse. They understand it. They understand that this is a target demographic, and as the technology evolves and progresses and moves out of these closed, protected spaces and more into an interoperable platform, it's not too hard to see how commerce and trade will occur more and more on the metaverse. And if you can fast forward 10 years or so, as the metaverse continues to develop and Web3 technologies continue to develop, and the sort of the network effect occurs, and you're able to, more and more consumers are able to take advantage of the benefits of these more collaborative, immersive spaces. You can see how the retail of the future will be in a more immersive, gamified, social type of an environment. So the metaverse really brings all of that together. It's entertaining, it's captivating in a lot of cases. It's much more immersive if you look past the limited technologies that we have today, it will give you much more of a sense of presence. The headsets, the VR headsets, and everybody thinks of VR when they think of the metaverse today, or at least it's very common to think of VR. The games I'm talking about don't even have VR applications unless the gaming console offers that feature. These are mostly presented on a flat. They're 3D games, but they're presented on a flat screen, and but they're 3D graphics and rendering that way, so it gives you more of a sense of immersion. But the headsets and augmented reality glasses and technologies brings these into a much more immersive, brings these worlds into a much more immersive experience for the user.
So I mean, like, this is really from a marketing perspective, right? I mean, so we're talking about customer acquisition, we're talking about brand identity, right? Ensuring that my brand shows up in all the places where my potential customers are going to be. But like, if I'm thinking about this, as, a jet aircraft manufacturing company, like a GE or Boeing or Northrop Grumman or someone like that, do I need to be in the metaverse? Do I need to start thinking about AR and VR? And if so, why is that?
You do. Well, the use cases that we're working on today in the manufacturing space is not quite the same. They're for different reasons than the consumer. It's not necessarily to attract new markets or enter new markets, but it's really more around the efficiency of collaboration around complex manufacturing and design. It was accelerated by the pandemic when engineers and designers couldn't get together to work on a problem. So these technologies have been around. These virtual reality and augmented reality technologies have been around, but the last couple of years have really accelerated the development and the usage of these technologies in manufacturing, so that engineers can work together on the digital twin of a product, or in one of the cases we're working on, a pipeline. An oil and gas company is looking at pulling their supply chain contractors, engineers from across different countries, across different regions together to integrate new valve systems, to update and train maintenance workers on modifications to equipment that are out in the field, and doing, instead of flying people in and having mock-ups or actual full-size pieces of equipment for the people to train on, they have a digital twin that is a digital virtual version, and you're able to, in some cases it's actually better. You're able to go inside of an engine and actually visualize the inner workings of a piece of equipment, or how a cylinder and how the valves are responding to a cylinder's action and activity. You can't really do that with a physical engine, but you can do that with a digital twin of an engine. You can miniaturize yourself and go inside. So there's just things that you can do in virtual reality with a digital twin it's just physically impossible in the real world. And it allows much more collaboration. It allows more minds and
perspectives, right?
Yeah,
like you get to see all the facets of the diamond, kind of, when you're together with all of your vendors in a secure spot.
Yeah, and most of the kind of the early reports out of this is that innovation is accelerating as a result of the ability to collaborate on digital twins of these complex pieces of machinery, kind of the being able to pull all the engineering talent together and work on these problems efficiently, quickly. You can do this in a matter of minutes or hours, as opposed to flying people in from around the world. That may take months to schedule. and get all the calendars aligned to get people in one place physically. In a virtual digital twin world in a metaverse, you put on the headsets and you beam to the location and your avatars are there. You're able to collaborate with colleagues from around the world. There's translation capabilities built in. You're able to handle different languages and manage solutions in a different way. So that's the promise and actually the reality in the manufacturing sector today. So as these technologies improve, the recalcitrance to improvement right now is very low, because we're not in an optimization stage, we're in an innovation stage. So the improvements are happening. If we're to have this conversation 6 months from now, so much will have changed, because the pace of innovation is happening so quickly in the metaverse and all the associated technologies. A lot of money is flowing in to create and to innovate, not to optimize, not to cut costs, but to actually create an event. And that reduces the recalcitrance to improvement. So the improvement is on a exponential pace right now. So
I liken this to going from cameras with film in it to a digital camera, because the consequence of iterating and trying and experimenting and failing miserably are almost zero. I think about, for me, what I'm most excited about when I think about Web3 and I think about AI is the ability for doctors to try out a new surgical procedure on a digital twin. And you could have, 14, virtual bodies that you could try out. Well, if I made the incision here, would it heal faster? If I made the incision this way, would I be able to get at the tumor more quickly? Would there be less risk of infection, less risk of complication, et cetera, et cetera? And I think the ability, just like I can now take 20 pictures and choose my favorite, I can now choose 20 different surgical procedures and see which one actually is most efficacious for a patient. And I think of all the engineering cycles, right, that we could be running on a jet engine, just like you say, I get to miniaturize myself and walk into it. Well, now I can see, where there's all this waste and, the 95 ball bearings that went into holding this to the plane, when in theory I could have used X. And not only that, I can do all the tests, in the metaverse before I ever have to apply it in the real world. And my son is a video game developer and designer. And that's his life, right? He could try pushing Mario off off the side of a building or off the roadway 9 million times as he figures out the funniest way for Mario to fall off of it, right?
Right.
And we never had that luxury before when we were doing hardcore manufacturing. And what was fascinating to me, one of my previous guests was from Coty Cosmetics, one of the biggest beauty brands in the world. And she told me that luxury brands have been in the metaverse, especially in China, for a really long time. And so there's e-commerce and influencers and storefronts and what have you, because there's a velvet rope even around those of who gets to participate at Gucci, Pucci, Prada, Balenciaga, like all of those, high-end names. And now they get to experiment with the wealthiest folks in the world to see what works, even at a luxury brand, which feels like it's the most artistic, divinely inspired kind of new creation. But we get to try it out on these folks, see what will grow, and then expand from there. So even luxury brands are finding it as an incredible laboratory, idea and creativity laboratory too.
Well, and that's a good example. The luxury brands are looking at how can you solve, two problems with this whole idea of metaverse and Web3. And one is continually marketing to a new audience and continually accessing new buyers. So you see some of the luxury brands, and I won't mention names. You can, but you see some of the luxury brands that are developing and making a strong presence in the metaverse, selling handbags and shoes and other kind of fashion accessories. They're selling avatars, right? And they're selling the avatars of the shoes and the handbags, and they're charging a lot of money for these skins in these games. Now, a couple of the luxury makers they're seeing that, if you sell these avatars as a non-fungible token, an NFT, the individual can take that NFT and they own it. It's a value to them. Now, that may be an avatar, it may be a purse or shoes or a shirt for their avatar, but that NFT can also be used to track provenance or authenticity of the physical good. So you have the NFT that is connected to the real handbag or the real article of clothing, and it addresses the problem of counterfeiting these goods, which is a really big problem in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really beneficial to some of these luxury brands to begin to explore how life in the metaverse, in a Web3 driven metaverse, is going to benefit their growth, the integrity and of their brand, and reduce some of the problems that they have, like counterfeiting and forgery.
Well, and it's not just them, right? I mean, like, I'm sure GM and Ford all have problem with counterfeit parts in, their respective industries, and frankly, just data integrity. I know working in public health for many years, you want to make sure that vaccine vial is transported at the correct temperature, right, through COVID to make sure. So Web3 has the possibility, I think, of enhancing the digital integrity of every stop on the supply chain. That's so critical. So, one thing is innovating these clients, right? AI, VR, all the acronyms we can throw at it, all the buzzwords, certainly. But how do you innovate a place like KPMG? Your clients have an expectation of you, right? Always bringing fresh ideas. What's it like on the inside? How do you bring, leverage some of these same technologies and so forth for an organization like KPMG?
Well, we're a very large multidisciplinary professional services firm. We serve many industries. So
all of them, really.
All of them, all industries. So we don't have like a single product or service that is sort of core to our business. We're really there to help the markets be confident in the integrity of the capital markets. And on the consulting side, we are there to help our clients be successful, to grow, to reduce risk, to achieve and execute on their strategies. So the portfolio of services and products that KPMG offers has to address that wide range. And the way we look at it, we take a comprehensive approach to innovation. We look at organic innovation, innovation that occurs at the grassroots, at our clients, at our accounts, through our partners and our professionals around the world. We look at how do we capture these ideas. We call that discipline inside out. Okay, so inside out. So we look at we enable these professionals and these partners with tools and technologies and investment dollars to create, to share ideas, to the technology that we use. We have a homegrown platform we call Illuminate, which helps connect the dots and identify the ideas that are getting the most traction and raise the visibility on these ideas so that we can then begin to support those ideas more effectively and begin to put more investment, more talent behind some of these ideas, so that as they grow, we're removing the barriers for these homegrown internal ideas to take shape and to get traction. And ultimately, these can become the next generation of businesses. We're solving a specific problem in one area, but we help make it, the environment, sort of amenable to the technology or the new idea beginning to scale and take on a life of its own. We have another component of innovation we call outside in. And this is where we begin to look at the startups that are well-funded, that are aligned with our strategy, that are kind of getting off the ground. But these ideas that are coming from the outside, they're not encumbered by our own biases that may be a result of our business model or our operating model. Some of these startups are beginning to approach these problems in a totally different manner. It may not be consistent with a professional services model. So we've been making some small minority investments in these startups and looking at how we can help take these startups to market with in our business. So bringing that outside innovation into our clients and developing that way.
Is that like a fully fledged like venture capital model? Is that an incubator model, an accelerator model? How do you view it?
It's a minority venture investment model.
Okay.
It looks more like a corporate venture capital, but it's very strategic. We don't look at ourselves as a VC firm. We're much more of a strategic partner to these startups.
Meaning you want to use the technology or you want to buy the company?
No, we want to use the technology or integrate the technology with our services in some way to solve a problem. Right. So it's beneficial to all parties. The parties get a channel to market through our client relationships, and then we are able to solve problems that we couldn't solve otherwise. And they bring something new to the table. The third element is what we call our studio, KPMG Studio, and that's our incubator. It's really three components to the studio. We've got an incubator, we have an accelerator, and those do two different jobs, and then we have a center of excellence. The incubator is really where a new idea comes to get vetted out and tested, and we determine problem solution fit in the incubator. Is this something that's really worthwhile? Is it in demand? Do we need to build it? We're not really building a scalable product in the incubator. But if it passes all the stage gate in the incubator, that's when it goes into an accelerator, and then that's where we begin to develop code. It may involve acquisitions to really build out this new business, and then test it in the market. In the accelerator, we commonly build with design partners that are our clients or our alliance partners, and build that together in the accelerator. Then the third component is the center of excellence, and that's where these businesses go when they're not ready for true scale out in the business, out in audit, tax, or advisory, but they need a little more care and feeding in a COE until they reach a critical mass where they can be moved and integrated into the business, or carved off and sold. And we haven't done that, but that would be a potential exit for some of these businesses that we have in the studio. So those are the three components: inside out, outside in, and then the studio. And the studio is really where we build and execute these ideas.
Wow. So you kind of you really have taken on a big chunk of the innovation ecosystem at KPMG. That's really fascinating. I didn't know all of those components were alive and kicking inside of those four walls. Sometimes we just get this perception of accounting, audit, tax, consulting, right? We don't necessarily think of these kind of breakthrough innovations coming from a place like KPMG. And I think that's really fantastic. And I imagine, you, as we say in the startup world, you eat your own dog food, right? You really got to try out and see whether or not these technologies are going to work and will work for your clients too. So that's fantastic. Well, Cliff, we've come to the time in the program where I ask my hot seat questions, but I got to be honest, pretty lukewarm. I think I have to up the ante on these questions. But as an innovator, what do you think is one of the greatest, or give me your top 3 greatest innovations in innovation history, in the framework of human existence? You can go back as far as you like, but give me one of what you think one of the top innovations in human history is.
I would, well, I would have to say, if we're going back to human history, I would have to say the printing press would be, that would, the innovations that I would focus on are those that allow human knowledge to flourish. And the printing press was one of those that allowed, the scaling of human knowledge in a way that we hadn't seen prior to that. Electricity, I would say, is a that brought the ability to improve the quality of life of people around the world, and say the ability to generate and distribute electricity would be probably another huge one.
Wait, I have more questions. I'm going to leave it there because you might want to use these answers somewhere else. So
okay.
That's question 1. I'll take both of those, the printing press and electricity. If you had the opportunity to join any innovation team in history, which one would you want to be a part of?
Any innovation team in history.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody does this alone.
What's that?
Because nobody does this alone.
Nobody does this alone. No, that is a hot seat question. I mean, being a part of Tesla, and how they were going to reshape auto manufacturing and introduce the electric car into an environment that was not really hospitable to the electric car. That has to be the high point of many people that were working on that, in that group and in that team, and to see it succeed the way it succeeded.
Exciting.
Has to have been incredible. And I think that'll go down in history as one of the most disruptive periods of time, is the introduction of the electric car into the world. So that would be one.
Wait, and then so let me ask you this last question. My last question is, so I'll let Elon know you'll be joining shortly, but maybe you could join the Twitter team and see what that's going to look like now that he's moving forward with the acquisition he announced today. So the last is a pet peeve, or a thing that you love, something that you wish would be innovative, like something that you wish would exist in the world, or something that drives you so crazy you wish somebody would frickin' innovate it by now. What would that thing be?
We seem to have hit a stall on air travel.
Air travel.
Air travel today is not much different than it was when I was just a little child. The planes go about the same speed. The only thing that's better is probably the service and the information that comes your way. You're able to book tickets easier. You're able to navigate that experience easier because of mobile devices and the internet. But transportation itself is still the same. It's as speed and pace. The airport configurations aren't much different than they were in the 60s and 70s.
So you'd love to see, and well, they do have electric. We had one of the founders of electric planes, taking their nod from Tesla, and now doing short haul taxis. Do you think that by innovating, most of the time it's iterative, right? So we take small flights before we go to the long haul flights. Do you see that, electric flight might be that innovation, or were you hoping for supersonic trips to London and back same day?
Yeah, more supersonic. Harnessing our knowledge of low Earth orbit and space, and kind of more supersonic intercontinental transportation. I don't believe the air taxis are going to be scalable. Nobody's going to want to see thousands of loud. I mean, you can't get past the noise. It's not the same as a car. You're dealing with moving air, and those are very loud, and nobody's going to tolerate thousands of those. They may be kind of cute in cities, within a New York City or a Hong Kong or Shanghai to move around within cities, but you've got to be very careful flying large number of those over populated areas.
Well, not to mention my Amazon packages by drone going to be getting in the way of all those electric taxis. So yeah.
It sounds good on paper, but when you have thousands of those in the air,
Right.
the odds are that there is going to be a failure at some point, and
Until we get self-driving planes to go with those electric planes. Right?
Right.
Well, Cliff, this has just been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the Innovation Storytellers show. And keep us up to date on all the cool new innovations that KPMG is working on.
All right, Susan, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.